My name is Sandy Crystal. I'm chair of the Bow Conservation Commission. Good evening and welcome. Since we have members of the Conservation Commissions, it's actually a formal meeting of the Conservation Commission. Here we are, November 17th, 2001. And the members here this evening are Bob Ball, and Dick Dagavarian. And earlier, Alex Green was here to help up. He had another commitment. Tonight, you'll hear information presented about the newly completed natural resources inventory, referred to as an NRI. Jeff Littleton of Moosewood Ecological, the company contracted to prepare the NRI, will review the field work and research conducted and the results and the map data and analyses. He was going to do it in person, as I mentioned, but he's going to do it through Zoom because of the vehicle issues. I want to thank those who gave permission for the biologists to survey their property. The information has been incorporated into the NRI and the maps produced. On the table are some surveys to seek feedback about your reactions, what information is important to you, and any questions that we can follow up on. So if you want to do that, I also put out just a sign-in sheet. You don't have to sign in, but if you want to put contact information or you have a question, that's another way to provide it. And if you think of any questions later or when accessing the maps online, you can email the Conservation Commission with any questions. There's a link on the Conservation Commission's website. It's conservation@bow.nh.gov. Over the years, Bow has acquired and protected natural resources in the town as conservation lands, and those lands are used and enjoyed by local wildlife as well as hikers, trail bikers, and snowmobilers. Those lands also help protect the quality of our drinking water and contribute to the rural character of our town. The NRI will help the Conservation Commission fulfill its responsibility to inform and manage our resources. And then if you're interested in protecting land for the many benefits it provides to Bow, I encourage you to contact the Conservation Commission. And I hope to hear from Jeff soon so that I can turn it over to him. We actually started this project 2 years ago. It was one of these that was affected by COVID, started, and then just some extra obstacles along the way. But there's been quite a bit of information produced, some of it that hasn't been produced before, and analyses that haven't been done before, and it will help us in our tasks ahead. What's that? Yeah, well, I mean, he had gotten the link. He should be. Ah, good. It's his wife's computer. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, how are you?
All right. Okay, let me see. I want to get, whoops, participants. I will make you co-host. I just did a little bit of an introduction. Oh,
Okay,
let me just make you co-host.
sure.
Or I guess I make you host. Okay, you'll have to give me back the host later, but you're now host.
Okay.
And let me.
We'll figure out how that works. I'm not a Zoom expert. Sounds good. Has everybody had a nice opportunity to check out the maps?
Yes, yep, we have them around the room. I can show you afterwards.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. That's always such a great feature to have around. Let's see.
Oh, and volume? Okay, let me turn up the volume. I could turn up the volume here. All right. So if you want to share your, oh, there you go. Okay.
Can you see that?
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
You just need to put it in slide, presentation mode. Ah,
Okay.
oh, good.
Does that work?
Yep.
Okay. Wonderful. So I hope everybody has been enjoying all the maps that has been presented for this NRI that we've been creating for Bow. My name is Jeff Littleton. I'm the principal ecologist and owner of Moosewood Ecological. And we've been putting together this project for a few years now. And we're really happy to present this to you. And we're really gracious for technology. And has been presented. Let's see. I just want to make sure. Can everybody hear okay? Should I turn up my volume?
I think it's okay now, Jeff.
Okay. All right. Good. Good. So again, welcome everyone. I'm very excited to present about this project and all the work that has gone into this with our team, as well as the town of Bow, Conservation Commission, Sandy Crystal, and everybody else that has really worked hard at doing this work. And what I'd like to do tonight is provide you with a summary, because we could sit here for hours on end talking about all the wonderful things about Bow, and I'm happy to do that. But just want to provide a little bit of a summary of what our fun stuff that we got to experience as a team of ecologists, better learning about Bow's landscape, because we've had a really wonderful time. Our team involved a few interns from Antioch, Chris Kane from Kane Conservation, who is a botanist, and so many others that has helped us to better understand the landscape of Bow, because it takes a whole team to really understand what's happening on a landscape, because we're just looking at this at a snapshot time. Laura Deming, who has been working with Moosewood Ecological for the past several years, who many of you probably know, working with New Hampshire Audubon. She's been really instrumental, and I want to just give her a big shout out, because she's added so much to this project. So basic goals of this project, we were reviewing existing information, like what do we know about Bow? What information is out there? Sandy and the Conservation Commission and the town knows an awful lot about what's happening in Bow, but there's also sometimes other information. And the Conservation Commission has been extremely instrumental and providing us with this information, especially like stuff that's been happening with Turry Pond, you know. So then we developed a series of maps. We're going to talk about a story map here in a moment, but we actually, fortunately, were able to get on the ground. We were actually able to ground truth, gosh, a couple dozen private properties, which was really wonderful. And I want to give a big shout out to all those private property owners that provided us with acceptance to access their land. And that was really wonderful. We were, we looked at tons of public properties, Notting Cook Forest, which is huge and amazing place in Bow, which I love and I want to go back to. But we were able to get a nice sample of the town of Bow to really understand, what's happening in the town. We also used aerial photography interpretation to look at mapping vernal pools. And again, Conservation Commission was really instrumental in supplying us with information on those. And we looked at grasslands, mapping those. We did a lot of field surveys, and the final report that we're almost done with. And then this presentation. So that's kind of the basics around this project. It's been long coming and a really wonderful opportunity to work with the town of Bow on this particular project, because there is so much that's happening there, and we've had so many partnerships throughout the whole process. So what I'd like to do here is, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I want to introduce a little bit about the work that we've been doing and the maps that are ensuing. And you will get an opportunity to not only view the story maps, which I'll introduce tonight, but also review the report itself. So part of it was producing a variety of maps based on what we know currently, and then what we've been able to understand on the landscape, which is a really wonderful thing. And I really appreciate that Bo went that extra step, because you can always use existing data and it gets you to a good place. But once you start getting out on a landscape and understanding what's out there, it helps you really to refine what's happening. And in terms of wildlife, plants, without getting a little bit too much into the details, and I'm happy to do that. And if anybody has any questions during this process, please speak up. But it's really great to be able to get out on the landscape to understand what's actually happening out there. And I think that's one of the things that's missing from a lot of NRIs, natural resource inventories for communities. And Bo went that extra step, and they recognized how important that is, and how we've actually utilized natural heritage data and local information to influence what we're finding. So one of the things that I think I want to, before I continue here, is I want to impress upon the fact that there's a lot of people that are walking on our landscape. No matter who you are, you like to fish, you like to hunt, you like to hike, you like to walk in the woods. You know, the information that you have is extremely valuable to a community. So we appreciate all your sharing for this project and beyond. And the Conservation Commission will be very receptive to learning more about what you see out on the landscape as we move forward with this NRI. Okay, so basically this natural resource inventory, or NRI, as I'm going to refer to it from here on out, you know, is a big collaboration of developing a lot of maps from existing resources and using the information that we gathered out in the field. So we're talking about like an aerial based map, water resources, ecological resources, and you know what, I'm just going to skip over this and just like jump right into it. So in Bow, you see all these little purple dots? These are all vernal pools that are distributed throughout the whole community. Some of them have been verified. Sandy has graciously supplied us with a ton of information about different places. Some of them are potential, but some of them are places that we have seen. And what you're seeing here are a lot of places that are on town-owned properties. And what does that help with? Land management. So what we've assembled here is the vast array of the wetlands and surface waters for Bow. The report goes into a whole lot more detail, and I'm happy to answer questions, but you can see the distribution, and this does not say this is all the vernal pools or potential vernal pools that are on the landscape, because there's lots that are out there. But one of the pieces of water resources, we're looking at the upper water, the wetlands and the surface waters. And so this is what we provided in terms of water resources. Throughout the manuscript, you will see a lot of documentation about acreage of a variety of resources. So for instance, and this is from the data that we've acquired and the data that we've kind of massaged a little bit too. Lacustrine lakes and ponds like Turry Pond, 125 acres, Riverine, 148 acres. You know, we're looking at well over, gosh, 2,000 acres of wetlands in Bow. And then we break it down into a variety of streams and what the town has in terms of these surface water resources that are associated with streams: the Merrimack River, Turkey River, Bella Brook, Bow Bog Brook, which probably many people know about. And then we also take a look at that standing water, what people think of ponds and lakes. Probably the most well-known is the Turry Pond. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And then the areas along Merrimack River that have been dammed. This data has been termed as ponded areas, and it, you know, how you see it is how you see it. But there's 250 acres of ponded areas along the Merrimack River. Does it have wildlife significance? Absolutely. Now we want to think about looking underneath the ground. And in terms of bow, we're looking at a lot of places along, if you looking at this map, looking at the eastern boundary along the Merrimack River, you'll see a lot of different colors, and these demonstrate where Bow's aquifers lie. And the New Hampshire DES, and Sandy knows more about this than I do, I bet, had teamed up with the Forest Society and started mapping the whole state in terms of looking at some of the best places for groundwater extraction for public water supplies. They've recently updated this, so they're on their second version. So this map actually shows not only where are the highest yielding aquifers are, but maybe where some of the best sources of a public water source is available into the future. So this provides you with the opportunity, if the community is interested in protecting public water supplies, where might you think about putting your dollars? The next sort of realm of maps includes habitat, includes wildlife. And so here, again, you can see all the vernal pools that we've mapped, that's been provided to us, and that we've confirmed and that we've identified through aerial photography interpretation. And then we overlay this with the Wildlife Action Plan. And we've corrected some of this data. It's kind of hard to correct it all based on the data that we have, but our field visits have really inspired us to better understand the landscape in Bow here. And again, we break these down by acreages. You can see what we've mapped and the area that they cover in the town. And now we break it down to rare elemental occurrences, which we call. And so it's very well known that there's a lot of rare plants and animals that are associated with Bow. And it didn't surprise us when we were going into this whole process that we would find wood turtles, Blanding's turtles, bald eagle, New England cottontails on the landscape. Some of these we didn't actually verify, but have been verified in the town based on Natural Heritage Bureau inventory information. But some of the fun stuff that we were actually able to see was some of these black gum swamps. This is at Nottingcook Forest. This tree, this black gum tree, is roughly about 300, 400 years old. And it's a wonderful, wonderful piece of our biological legacy, and specifically for Bow. And it's easy to find. There's a couple of these in the swamp. It's just right off the road. I mean, there's so many of these that are distributed throughout Bow. It's really, really wonderful and interesting. And when we, as an ecologist, personally, when I come upon some of these sites, it's extremely interesting because we don't get to experience these sites as much as probably like 300 years ago, 200 years ago. And it's a wonderful, wonderful legacy that we get to see. And you have these in your town. Vernal pools, mentioned that before, galore. We have wood frogs, we have spotted salamanders. There's amazing array of vernal pools that are distributed all throughout the community, and that really host not just the amphibian population, but the macroinvertebrate population and migratory species like wood ducks that land in these areas. I've seen great blue herons hanging out in the middle of the woods in vernal pools. It's amazing if you just start to observe, but there's so many of these on your landscape, and it's really amazing. The other piece that we'd like to take a look at when we're talking about wildlife resources is the unfragmented landscape. Now, this data we refined a bit, but this was provided by New Hampshire Fish and Game through their wildlife action plan. But you can very easily see where some of the biggest unfragmented forests are in Bow, and they are very significant. Another resource that we look at is agricultural resources. Is your community really interested in protecting significant lands into the future? Maybe there's particular farms that are already doing their thing on, maybe it's prime farmland soils or other farmland soils of significance. You know, where's that happening? And so now we can better understand where these areas are distributed throughout town. And you see a lot of yellow, and that's good soils, but then you see some of the smaller polygons, and those are a little bit more significant. And I want to give a big shout out to those that are farming lands in Bow, because this is what the Natural Resource Conservation Service says as being really good soils, but you may have been doing a lot more for these soils than what shows up here. So big shout out to existing farms and everything that you do to contribute to this understanding of agricultural soils. We also like to take a look at this from a forest perspective. And, you know, again, this takes a look at soils and looking at the capability of these soils to produce products, if I must say it in that way. So you see all of Bow is like, wow, got a lot of good soils here. Well, you do. And you see the yellow areas, those are great for white pine. The green is for more hardwoods. And it's a general idea of understanding about the forest dynamics. It doesn't get down to the specific nature of everything, but it does give you a general idea of what's going on the landscape. The next thing that we wanted to do was really understand the conservation lands. And this is what was really instrumental working with the town of Bow, the Conservation Commission, is really understanding what lands are conserved, what lands are just town owned, and in terms of developing conservation priorities, which we'll go into in a minute. So I think that around your room there, you have all these maps, and you have this particular map that shows a variety of conservation and public owned lands. And I think that Sandy has provided a key based on the numbers of all these lands, because there's a lot that's happening in Bow. So the whole idea of developing this NRI and the product sort of behind it, not only understanding the distribution and the species diversity on the landscape and where are they, is to better understand some of the most important lands ecologically for protection. So that's what we call conservation focus areas. And this has been a huge process of not only looking at existing data that we've been able to get access to, but also talking with Sandy and the rest of the Conservation Commission, as well as our site investigations. And this is what we came up with. And I think Sandy may also have put up a list of these particular areas, but these conservation focus areas really rise to the top when we're talking about rare species, biodiversity, climate resilience. We're talking about forest fragmentation. These are some of the most ideal areas. And if you look at this, it also includes the areas that are in conservation. So the idea of designing ecological reserves is the idea of sort of binding them all together, if I may. And you can see a lot of green space in Bow, and then all these oranges spaces are those areas that have really strong ecological values that support the biodiversity within your town. So there's tons of ways to incorporate your NRI. Your master plan is the first and foremost place to to incorporate your master plan. You can develop a detailed conservation plan, looking at land conservation efforts. We've done actually a lot of work. I didn't show a couple of maps, but there's a lot of information that we've provided with the Conservation Commission to work with willing landowners. And I say that twice because with conservation, because some lands have a bit higher conservation value. You can look at developing a variety of land use techniques for zoning, education. I can't explain that more. Outreach to landowners, helping landowners to better manage their lands depending upon what their goals and objectives are. Acquisition of grants. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So let's see if we can go to this website so I can show you. Sandy, do you have access to this?
Yep. Okay, you'll have to go to open the participants list and turn it back to me being
Right.
the host.
Okay. Yep.
So you go to more in the participants list. And then you can make me the host.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. There we go.
Oh, actually, I could do it. I don't even need you. Well, I guess if we want to have it as part of the recording, it would be good for you to turn it back to me.
Okay.
Ah.
Oop,
Oh, host has stopped your video.
yeah. Oh, there we go. Does that work?
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess the question is, okay. I think it started again because it gives me the choice to stop. Okay, let me then go to share screen.
Oh, nice.
But then I have to operate the story map. So if you want me to go to any specific page.
Well, one of the things that I would provide the audience with is this story map, which is basically a rundown of the NRI without having to read the whole manual. And some people don't like to do that, and I understand. But these story maps are a beautiful way of telling the story of what's going on in Bow. And so you can click upon, and I appreciate all the pictures that has been supplied by the Conservation Commission for these story maps, along with our own. But they really break down the whole NRI, the natural resource inventory of what's going on in your town. And it's a wonderful way to explore with what's happening in your community. And all the maps that I just showed and talked about briefly, which I could go on for hours, is really built into this whole story map, which will be easily accessible to everyone, and provides you with a wonderful background of each idea or each topic surrounding these, such as surface water and groundwater. Why are they important? What does it mean? What is surface water? What is groundwater? Why do we care about this? What do we care about wildlife habitat? There's lots of reasons, and it's a wonderful way for you to interact with the variety of maps that we've produced. And Sandy, if you want to click on to some. Okay.
Okay, I will move the legend.
Wonderful.
So
So
you
now
can,
we, yeah, go ahead, Sandy.
yeah, you can just zoom in to certain parcels and see the information. And if you want to see what the symbols represent, the legend is there. You can kind of fold it back up and open it up.
Yeah, so it's a wonderful interactive way for everybody
It'll
to.
be posted very shortly. Should I go to groundwater?
And so I will send this tomorrow or this evening to Sandy for the Regional Planning Commission to post on their website.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure that it was going to be no issue of access for tonight.
Mm-hmm. Should go to the groundwater?
Yeah, sure. Let's go to groundwater. So again, I showed this map earlier, but you can like zoom in, and it's really wonderful to be able to get a really good understanding of what is this we're talking about with groundwater? Why is it important? And where are these particular areas? Because yeah, looking at the favorable gravel well analysis, it just provides you with a little bit more intimate experience, I think, with your community in the town in which you live or visit if you don't live in the town.
Go to the wildlife habitat one.
Sure. So one of the things that we did that you'll see here, we refined some of this data. Again, I mentioned it earlier, but particularly the grasslands data layer, because that's kind of a big piece that we like to work on, because there's a variety of species, a whole host of species that are associated with this particular habitat. And we want to refine that so we better understand where these particular areas are. And so now you can click onto here and find out where these particular areas are, and all of them are linked to what sort of habitat that is. And thank you, Sandy, for doing this. Whether it's like a wetlands and those black gum swamps that are all over Bow, which is amazing and fun. So now you can see where these are and click onto them as Sandy's doing. And there's also lots of links in the narrative. So you can click on to the New Hampshire Wildlife Action Plan. Just a way of, yeah, I think that's your photo, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's just a really fun and easy way for everybody to explore Bow's natural resources, the biodiversity, and understand what's happening on the landscape, as we're all just so associated with our computers and the landscape here. And so, yeah, now we're moving to the unfragmented landscape.
And the advantage of the story map with this is that the acreage of these areas is indicated. And these areas you can see actually shows the existing conservation land and additional land next to it that is basically high quality and would be considered unfragmented.
Absolutely, that's a great point, Sandy. They are considered as high quality areas for wildlife habitat, and that's why it really brings back to the point of the conservation focus areas, is that idea of having high quality habitat. Some of them may be by roads, but it may have those landing turtles, and but that idea of high quality habitat, I want to come back to that, is really significant when you're looking at townwide planning, proactive planning, understanding where these particular areas are. And, based on our field work and our research, I think we have outlined good areas for the town to consider for conservation moving forward. Forest and agriculture. Again, this is all really soils based, although we did map out grasslands. We redefined that based on the existing information. Obviously, when you look at the town and where these forest soils are, some have been developed. But it gives you a good glimpse at where some of the best soils for growing forests. And luckily, in New Hampshire, we grow good forest. We have cut them time and time again, and they just keep coming back. Hopefully that continues into the future. I think it will. But it does give us a wonderful understanding of some of the best areas in Bow. We're growing softwoods, hardwoods, and and again, this all blends into those areas that are conservation focus areas. It's not all just one simple sort of process. It's like anything that you think about when you're wanting to maybe purchase something. There's a lot of different factors that come into that realm, and that's what we're trying to bring to the Conservation Commission, to the town, is all these different things in the toolbox, understanding which areas are really significant depending upon the town's priorities. So here we have conservation lands, town-owned lands. You can see the town-owned lands that are hatched. Most of them are conserved, some are not. And gives you a good sense of the area in which are conserved. And again, this was a big piece that we tried to correct the best that we could, working with the Conservation Commission. And as we moved forward to identifying conservation focus areas. But now you can see tons of different areas. Lots of them are open space that have trails that you can go visit. Not all conservation lands are open to the public. A lot are, so just be mindful of that. But this gives you a good sense throughout the town where conservation lands and town-owned lands are distributed, basically.
Go to the conservation focus areas.
All right, here we go. And thank you, Sandy, for supporting all this. I appreciate it very much. So there was multiple factors that we took into place to identify where these conservation focus areas should be from our perspective as being ecologists, understanding the data that we've been provided, the data that we collect in the field, and looking at the landscape. So, around it, and there's a lot of sensitive data that we actually gathered that we can't share, that went into this. So there was multiple factors that helped us to identify this. Now, is it like architecture? A little different. It has to do with our natural landscape, and things change over time, especially with developments, especially with maybe a decline of a species or something. And so we start to look at our landscape in a different way, looking at available wildlife habitat, where these species may be, where they are, where they could be, and to be able to think about protecting these areas so that they may thrive into the future. And we're not talking about just rare species. We kind of focus on that a lot, but we want generalists to be around forever too. You know, anywhere on the landscape, you can find a blue jay or American robin, but we always want them to be on our landscape. But we also want to think about things like Blanding's turtles and spotted turtles and black racers that are having a really, really hard time struggling to live within our landscape and where they might be able to persist. So we kind of bundle all this stuff together to try to figure out these areas for future conservation. And when it comes down to it, you know, we did a variety of analyses, parcel-based analyses based on water resources, ecological resources, and forest and ag resources. And that's what kind of helped define these conservation focus areas. Because when it comes down to it, when you're looking at conservation, we're working with willing landowners, right? So a landowner is concerned about protection of their natural resources, or they want to learn more about their natural resources, which is a wonderful thing. And that's what this natural resource inventory can help with. And so we're just trying to move this a little bit forward in a manner that helps Conservation Commission, the town, with looking at where they might want to put their expenditures, essentially.
All right. So should we maybe go to questions?
Yes, that would be great. I do want to conclude with a couple of different facts here. Well over 70 species of birds, 16 mammals, 11 amphibians, 8 reptiles, 15 species of conservation concern, and 8 fish is what we came up with for the community through our work with New Hampshire Fish and Game and the data that we collected. And this is only a piece of what's known in your town. So yes, let's move to questions and answers.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeff. Let me I stopped the share, so you're now full screen here.
Okay. Sounds good.
It can be online in the next week. I mean, in fact, if anybody wants the link, I can send the link that Jeff has where, like Jeff mentioned, we're going to move. You have to have access to the special software, the ArcGIS online software. So the Regional Planning Commission has had access and has agreed to host it. So I'll get the map data in the format and provide it to the Regional Planning Commission so they'll be able to have it. But in the short term, I can give you the link to that we have here. So if you want to give your name and address, I can, or email address, I'll email you the link.
I live on Allen Road, backing up to Money Cook, and we used to hear coyotes come behind the house a lot, and occasionally see them on the 7%. I think it's been 7 or 8 years since I've seen them. That there used to be a rare moose that would come back there. It's probably been 10 years. I wonder
if there was what?
I still know that's the mammals.
On the list of mammals, they were asking about moose and coyote. I know we hear coyote, we're kind of upgrading from Turry Pond and we hear coyote occasionally.
Oh yeah, no, we definitely saw a sign of coyote, a lot of moose in your community, which is really wonderful. And bobcat, we're talking about like a variety of mammals that need a big space. Bear, all along those black gum trees. I think we have a really cool picture in the report that shows where a black bear was on a black gum. But yes.
Matt?
So you mentioned a lot about the fragmented or non-fragmented areas. There's two angles of that. For humans, in terms of recreation, we love everything to be contiguous. If you start in one part of town and you stay in the woods the whole time. But animals, well, we love all the places that we stay. Can you talk a little bit about animal movements and how the fact that a lot of them are fragmented, the areas that are fragmented make it difficult?
Yeah, problems with fragmented lands. Yeah.
So, like us, mammals are fairly adaptable, but there's other wildlife that may not be so suitable to that idea. We cross roads, bears cross roads, coyotes cross roads. Sometimes they get hit, and the idea of protecting larger unfragmented areas specifically associated with conservation areas is really important for a variety of different reasons. We as humans, I think we've learned to navigate through our landscape the way it's been built. Wildlife, I think some have adapted, like coyotes and fox and bear. Some haven't, like ovenbirds and other neotropical migrant birds haven't really figured out how to really navigate through this whole world when they're moving from New England to South America or Central America. So it gets a little complicated, but the whole idea is also looking at the idea of plant diversity and invasive species. So protecting large unfragmented blocks of forest have a huge impact on forest resilience, landscape resilience, wildlife communities, plant communities native to our area. And it makes a big impact. I mean, it gets a bit complicated, but that's the kind of message I think that I'd like to provide for now.
Any other questions?
I have a comment, and that is, I guess I have a little different view of the forest. In that, when you say that we put them over and over again, and they just will grow. The fact of the matter, American agriculture, which is probably the best in the world, if they're going to grow chickens and corn, what we've done is we have always culled the worst and bred the best. But as far as the New forest, we have done exactly the opposite. And we have repeatedly cut the worst and repropagated the cults. And so if you really look around the forests above, they're in terrible shape. And so we may have forest land and we may have forest soils, but we really don't have forests. We really just have woods. And that's just
Yeah.
my view.
Well, I guess if I can say something, Jeff, before you speak. Well, a lot of our forested areas were pasture. I mean, that was the type of ag that was, and so there's a lot of young stuff that's grown up. But, and I'll let Jeff speak, but the Conservation Commission has like a timber management plan that's about 10 years old. We need to update it, and in considering a lot of the issues with climate change and what they call forest carbon and where the carbon is stored, there are issues with taking the best and leaving the worst, you know, like taking the big hemlock and leaving the little stuff. So that's something that we're going to be addressing because our management plan is more than 10 years old, so it needs to be updated. So, but Jeff, if you want to speak on the forests.
Yeah, I didn't really collect all the information, the gentleman's comments, but you know, Sandy, you hit a good point about, you know, taking the best, and that's not always the best thing to do when you're dealing with forest management. I think that personally, as an ecologist and someone who's really mindful and who has walked tons of forests for decades and looking at different management practices, I think that we need to manage in a little bit different ways these days. And I think that may be what the gentleman was talking to. And I think we really need to manage for diversity. I think we need to think about that carbon sequestration and a variety of ways that we can do that. I think there's a ton of different ways, and we can blend agriculture into that whole process as well. I've learned an awful lot from the Cheshire County Conservation District Manager about how to better manage agricultural lands to help sequester carbon in terms of like preserving fungal threads in fields through a lot of different management techniques. And I know I'm kind of like getting out there, but I think that there are exciting ways that we can manage our forests. But I do think that we need to manage our forest, at least some of them, not all of them. Some of them need to be just let go, you know, and just do their own things. But Sandy brought up a great point about, you know, years ago, all this land was open. How did that influence our forest that we see today? This is one of the things that I teach about and that I understand, and like I read on the forested landscape. You know, how does the past influence the present, and what does that mean for the future? So I think about this an awful lot when I walk through the woods, which is almost a curse to me. as I try to just enjoy going on a hike, I think about this stuff a lot. But I think you have a great point moving forward, and I think we just need to be mindful about our management.
Sandy, I don't know if I'm just more aware of it now, but it just seems like there's a lot of invasive species like industry, especially the sea, close to the Merrimack River. It just seems to be everywhere.
Yeah, the question was about the invasive species that are everywhere and near the Merrimack River. Any place that's subject to disturbance, whether natural or human caused, is a good place for invasive species. So unfortunately, also the birds like to frequent the river, you know, the area there. And so they bring seeds, they deposit them, they take them elsewhere and deposit them. I mean, this is also why we need these intact areas. And we actually do need to do more on invasive species management. The Hammond property, because it was agricultural, it's bad not only around the field, but I've pulled out bittersweet kind of farther in. It actually never flowered because it didn't have enough sun, but it was there. And so if you had a couple of trees come down and a storm eroded, that thing would really start taking off. So we do need to pay attention to that. And that's something that we should, you know, kind of get volunteers to focus on certain areas and start trying to take out some of the invasives.
Yeah, absolutely. Sandy, I think you brought up a great point, and you know this stuff. You're out in the field all the time, and there's some places that are worth a lot more attention than others, depending upon what the natural community is and everything. And I think about the Merrimack River. I think about so many river systems in Bow and wetland edges, because those are always susceptible. And Sandy, to invasives and how much they will spread and how fastly they will spread. And the thing is, we have more and more invasives that are coming in these days, and it's just a product of our commerce and our movements throughout our world. But some areas definitely should have more management going on. Absolutely.
Any other questions? Questions for Jeff? All right, great. Well, thank you very much, Jeff. We might look around at the maps again for a little while. Glad we were able to work this out. Glad I got a backup projector.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so happy that this was able to happen. I'm happy to hang out on text if there's any other questions or whatever for a while, or whatever's needed.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think we'll just we'll end it right now. So thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And we'll be in touch on getting the rest of the data.
Yep. I have that ready, and I'll send that over this week for you.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you very much, Jeff. Take care.
All right. Wonderful. Take care.
Yeah, you too.